After helping Columbina against Rerir, we finally get to see the power of the Moon Sisters. Not only do we find and use the power of the iridescent moon, basically confirming Arlecchino's connection to Perrin Harry, but we also find out more about who the sinners really are and their true motives. And that doesn't even cover half of the lore bomb, since we also get to see Dainslief in a different light regarding Rerir, and we get to see a glimpse of the Ibis King's leyline memory power through Nefer, as well as a first-hand telling of
AlÆhn GuillotÄhn
and the Artisan Kreutz from Marionette in an Archon quest. Hey guys, what's up? Aru. Version Luna 2 had no right to reveal this much lore, so if you want to know what those were, then stick around since we'll be covering all of that. Nefer is honestly the most broken character, not because of her kit, but because her power comes from the Ibis King, letting her recreate theoretical scenarios that are 99% accurate using a chess set and memories, which is quite similar to the Abyss twin recreating Khaenri'ah. So if you want to be a descender like Nefer, then I suggest pulling her using Lootbar. I've said this already before, but despite my fear of using top-up sites, Lootbar has been a real help for me. They keep your account 100% secure using only your UID and region, while every top-up goes through the in-game route like you normally do. Now let's pick up 6,480 Genesis Crystals through Lootbar, which cost $76 instead of the usual $99. That's like what, 25% off? And because it's my first top-up, I also get the double Genesis Crystals right after checkout. Using my link in the description, you get 15% off and a 10% off for new users, and even more discounts since it's Luna 2, and there's a special sale for those of you wanting Nefer and Furina. Lootbar also covers other gacha games, and they have a lot of 5-star reviews from both users and content creators that you probably watch too, and you can just go to their Discord if anything goes wrong. I'm really happy that I get to help you guys save up these extra pulls because we all know that we need them. So click on that link and get those huge discounts on your very first top-up. Best of luck on your pulls, and a big thank you to Lootbar for supporting this video. Rerir the Rerir of Solnari, or better known as the Ravager of the Moon, began as the Vinster King's special agent and ended up as the Wild Hunt, a self-regenerating abyssal calamity hunting Nodcry. As a spy to the throne, he gathered intelligence and assassinated descendants of the Crimson Moon dynasty for the king's research on the abyss, while the crux of his life is Tholindis, his would-be fiancé, a Universitas scholar of Khaenri'ah, a Crimson Moon heir, and likely a pure-blooded Khaenri'an. But on the night everything in Khaenri'ah burned, Tholindis smuggled a shard of the moon and fled through a moon gate. Rerir plunged after her and was torn apart. Now, when his emotional body finally recoalesced, it screamed the 3 names that he could still remember: Rhinnedottir, Rhinnedottir, and Tholindis. The 3 hottest points in his memory and the leading cause of his current life, or rather, unlife. What's interesting is that Rerir can track other people's thoughts, and is especially powerful because he is the Abyss, intruding into Nefer's chessboard and constructing a counterfeit memory to trap us. Something else is Rerir's pre-Abyss skillset, which is retained even after he was devolved into a walking Abyss body of emotions. It's as if the last thing he was most angry about was what the Abyss had instilled into his mind in his reincarnation. But Tholindis' notes actually point to Abyss inhibitors and the Moon Marrow Chambers as the only reliable control points for the phenomenon he has become, sort of like a Kuvaki array that summoned his form, which again brings up connections between moon powers and the Abyss, but we'll talk about that later with Arlecchino. Now, the Vinster King, Irminsul, was his handler and the mad architect of the Crimson Moon Purges. Tholindis is the lost focus of his rage though, the Moon Marrow researcher, the lover, and the reason he stepped into the gate. While the Abyssal Vedrfolnir specifically is the voice in his head and the first name he spits out when he was reforming. To the present day Archon quest, Rerir is an escalating world threat, a sinner or descender level power, so dangerous that the plan to beat him requires borrowing his own power and letting Columbina pull his focus with Albedo and Durin along with an alchemical array and weaponizing his rage against him. But that's just one of the reasons why he hates and wants Columbina. And speaking of Columbina, once the 3rd Harbinger, the Damselette is currently the physical Frost Moon's divinity. In practice, she functions as a moon goddess, and both allies and rivals treat her authority as such. In the current Archon quest, she helps recover and purify the iridescent moon's marrow, calling it an undying flame tainted by the Abyss, which she then gives to Arlecchino for safekeeping while also absorbing both of the marrows' power despite being somewhat incompatible, since moons can't exactly take each other's powers, which then lifts her back to roughly her former third Harbinger output, still just a bit short of what she believes is needed to face Rerir. But that's what everybody else is for. Anyway, mechanically, she clarifies the cosmology of the moons. A moon goddess has the right to open a moon gate, but sustaining it requires enormous power. This explains her use of moon gates that only the frost moon can create, compared to the moon gates that the iridescent moon or the eternal moon have. Now, interestingly, you can also see the eternal moon's corpse when she threw Rerir into outer space. Now, I'm curious though if we would have opened a moon gate to the frost moon if Rerir wasn't such a big threat. This entire arc would have been way quicker if Rerir wasn't present. Now, in contrast, Arlecchino's Two Worlds' flame is actually a moon gate of the iridescent moon. I don't know how that works, but yeah, Arlecchino can do that even without the iridescent moon's power. Arlecchino keeps that gate open while we locate the iridescent moon's marrow, but it's likely similar to how Perrin Harry and the people of the Crimson Moon dynasty were able to find the Crimson Moon as a giant red eye, which is this one right here. Her personal dilemma, as shown in the Archon quest, is one of freedom at a cost. She left the Fatui after paying dearly for the Tsarits's protection and got tired of being used like a bottomless battery. Freedom comes at a price, as Arlecchino says, but what exactly did she pay for? Maybe a moon version of the Gnosis, or half of her authority as the Frost Moon given to the Tsaritsa? It's possible since her powers do seem similar. An oath, or maybe a seal on her divinity, or an engineered siphoning net, which constantly eats her power and is probably why she's rejected by the world. Now, any of these can explain her early weaknesses and her cautious push toward a triple moon resonance as an endgame, which we can already see here. So maybe what we're trying to do is put together 3 moon marrows to create a single moon god, just like I've theorized way before Luna 1 even released. Moving on, Dainslief basically solidifies the 5 sinners and his ties to them, but also unlocks a softer side of his personality. He commissions Nefer to dig into Rerir's past and openly exposes his Conrian origin to everyone in Varka's hideout, basically making all of the allegations about him true. His relations with Rerir Tholindis as his elder brother, as well as knowing Rhinnedottir, Hroptatyr, Sirtology, and Rerir close enough to the point that they'd actually work together and storm the king's palace after he blinded Rerir Tholindis. The twist here comes at the end, where Dainslief admits that he was betrayed even by his brother, who by all accounts should have seen this happening, by the way, and still chose the Abyss. That emotional betrayal and load explains why Dainslief's memories is focused on the sinners and why he was shaken when he finds out about Rerir's backstory. He calls Rerir an acquaintance with no grand ambitions after all, and showing a softer side to how we usually know him today. The sequence of memories matters too. Dain saying that he remembers it all is the emotional part when he loses his memories, which then collides with him saying that Rerir is a mystery, even though they were quite close friends long ago. Interestingly, he seems to hate Rerir Tholindis more, while he regards Rerir as a confusing case of a normal soldier that became a sinner, and finding out about Rerir's past even before the fight made him more empathetic towards him, almost to the point that his rage and situation is justifiable despite the ensuing irrationality at the time. He now sees Rerir as someone lost in his own circumstances and forced to deal with his own cards, and it does seem like Rerir earned some sort of respect from Dainslief. Next, our favorite Jester sinner, which I'll talk about in a different video, but Hroptatyr is the president of the Universitas Magistorium, Conria's umbrella academy, and serves as a chief royal mage, the Wise, they call him, one of the 5 sinners and a member of the 4 pillars nearest to the throne. In public, he repeats the line about being a humble servant, but in private, he admits that he simply appeases the Mad King because it's best for the Universitas, a sort of help me help you sort of situation. Rhinnedottir needles him about his jealous vice president and calls out his acts as well. Hroptatyr was of course present at Dain's emergency council right after Rerir Tholindis was blinded, and he's actually the first to object against Dain's rebellion as it is too dangerous and is an oath breach. Which, if you noticed, Hroptatyr wasn't there when they stormed the palace. Personality-wise, he is a suave bureaucrat who reads the king's motives clearly and chooses his duty as a sage to the institution over duty to the truth. Basically, again, he's trying to appease whatever this Vinster king wants. His self-effacing words is a persuasive tactic to keep factions compliant and basically keeps everything in line with what he wants. Not only that, his relations reflect his role. Co-trusted along with Vedderfolnir by the king, a sparring partner to Rhinnedottir, as well as a pillar just like Sirtology and the Four Sages, and institutional counterweight or the counter-argument against Dainslief's justice-centered personality. As a theory slot, he fits as the reason or knowledge aspect among the sinners. He is the negative side of the Primordial One's power, the brain behind everything that's happening regarding the Abyss. Now, if the Vinster King weaponized Abyss research and blew up anything that opposed him, which actually happens by the way, then Hroptatyr's appeasement is basically a sneaky compliance, which honestly fits with his chess piece being a jester of comedy and the comedic tragedy of Conria's downfall. Add to that the mention of another sage named Efter Vit, which I honestly think is Piero, the one sage that couldn't convince King Irminsul against the advice of his 4 trusted pillars, which is mentioned in the Pale Flame set. This is how Conria's downfall started, and Hroptatyr the wise jester, I think, is the grand architect, and is the same person that Piero is trying to emulate, the jester. Next, Rhinnedottir is the life maker of Kemia, creator of Durin and master of Albedo, counted among the 5 sinners the Hexenzirkles are, and currently the Shade of Life. Quite a job title if you ask me. Now in Nodecry, she shows up as a razor-tongued and politically fluent who teases Sirtology about unfair advantages, as well as offering to replace limbs with breezy confidence of a surgeon-engineer, as well as offering free healthcare and medical surgeries. But she is also the one who instantly points to Hroptatyr regarding Vedderfolnir's jailing like a secret ploy to cut off one of the trusted pillars. It's as if she already knows that Hroptatyr is up to something. But then we find out that it's just the Mad King being too engrossed with power, as mentioned by Vedderfolnir. But there's honestly not a lot to say about her reveal other than her chess piece being similar in color scheme to her own character design in God's Limits, which speaks volumes to how accurate Nefer's chess set actually is when finding out about people's memory and past. Vedderfolnir the Visionary is Dainslief's elder brother. The main focus of his arrival in the story was on foretelling Rerir's future with a warning and his blinding and imprisonment by the Vinster King, which triggers Dain's decision to rally the other sages, to storm the palace. In Vedderfolnir's prison cell, he speaks about Rerir and fate's cruelty. He simply laughs and mentions that it's not just Rerir or Vedderfolnir who can hear those voices, which means that the other sinners can too, and especially the Vinster King. He notes that his blinding snuffed out his foresight until that very night where Conria fell. The best theory here is that all of the sinners were actually touched by the external link of the abyssal whispering voice, an abyssal current that uses other people's authority as its mask. And for Rerir, it's Vedderfolnir, since he basically told him not to get married to Tholindis, of which I'm sure anyone would get mad at, especially when it comes to telling the future. The Vinster King's move to blind him is fear over power. If a seer can predict and anticipate the future that the Vinster King is building, then it would involve all of his failures, which led to his lost eyes. But we can only hope that his new future-telling power isn't altered by the Abyss already, and is basically pushing for a future where the Abyss consumes all of Tevat. The Vinster King is the Eclipse Dynasty's ruler, the one who summons Vedderfolnir only to blind him and prison, and the one who runs Rerir as his hunter in a purge of the Crimson Moon descendants for air quotes research. He is obsessed with abyssal power, and when Rerir breaks, he splits the king's name in the same breath as Irminsul, implying this regime's legitimacy flowed through the world's memory tree, the Irminsul tree, which I've been theorizing for so long that Conria was next to the Irminsul tree, but you guys weren't ready for that conversation. His abyssal madness also solidifies the lore we have about the deathly statuettes, as well as the lore from Kaya's lineage as retainers. Now it doesn't stop there, because the King's Abyss works quite well with canonical events in Sumeru that forbidden knowledge corroded the Irminsul tree, and is the main reason the Archons went to Conria. Everything related to the Irminsul tree, the Dendro Archon, and Conria's fall is solely because of the Vinster King's madness. And that madness is because of his fixation on the Abyss, which is of course connected to the previous dynasty that also harvested the Abyss through the moon. Arlecchino's hidden character quest, Everlasting as the Moon, quietly confirms a bloodline tied to the Crimson Moon dynasty and paints her as a survivor of two worlds. The same chimney that the Crimson Moon orphans saw appears in her entire story quest too. Story quest? In her quest segment. And at the end of that chimney, we see the same red eye, which is the Abyss manifestation of the Crimson Moon. Arlecchino's black hands and the way her power climbs with emotion tracks back to the iridescent moon wielding the Abyss, which is deeply rooted in emotions and how the Abyss infects their people. The shattered remnants of the iridescent moon fused with the Abyss. Now with Arlecchino's two worlds flames, she can perform the air quotes crossing, which is a moon gate ritual specific to the iridescent moon that opens a passage or chimney, but only as long as she can sustain it, which is similar to all other Moongate creations. Something interesting here is the Abyss's method of trapping the iridescent moon's marrow is similar to how Phlogiston was caged in Natlan, which I think connects to a single form of harnessing, corrupting, and bottling rival powers. If the Crimson Moon dynasty's power was basically the iridescent moon plus the Abyss, follows that the Black Sun dynasty, or the Eclipse dynasty, would be the Sun and the Abyss, a name that I think points towards Nibelung, the maker of the moons and perhaps the sun itself. This is of course still a theory that Nibelung is the morning star. There's honestly not a lot to talk about with Sandrone apart from her confirming every allegation that she has indeed a robot/human of Mary and GuillotÄhn. I honestly don't know what else to tell you guys here since I've already mentioned that before in many videos, but she does provide a clear perspective and her thoughts on both Renee and AlÆhn. AlÄhn, GuillotÄhn. Okay, in that both of them were hyper-focused on opposite ends of the spectrum regarding the doomsday prediction, which Sandrone sees as a flaw in both of their ideals, which interestingly is also the same sentiment that she had when faced with Rerir's ideals for knowledge and power back in Luna 1. I will of course make a more in-depth video about her, as well as a retrospective look at the Narcissan Kreutz lore. Nefer is the boss of Nordkreis Curatorium of Secrets and the de facto field lead on the Rerir operation, the one who pokes Rerir's brain and was caught by it as a response, as well as providing some pretty interesting lore that she has the demigod-like power. The chess set that she has from King Deshret is an investigative relic. With this chess set, Nefer can perceive hidden shoots and perform a ceremony that drags willing companions through a target's memories. In practice, she basically finds out her target's memories and create an accurate depiction of events based on those gathered memories. Quite a powerful tool that's on par with how the Irminsul can write and rewrite events based on memory alone. Her power is honestly the most interesting here and is even more interesting than the Sinner's or even Vedrfolnir's prophecy predictions, since this power can basically recreate events and create an accurate memory replacement or copy if certain memories aren't contained, which used Rerir's fragmented past and memories as an example. We can only imagine what sort of ley line creating power that her chess set has, especially since it's on par with the power that the Abyss sibling uses to recreate a copy of Khaenri'ah. This is how powerful Nefer's chess set is, and I think might reveal more about how the Abyss is going to recreate their kingdom. Anyway, that's pretty much all I've got for you today. If you enjoyed it, then do leave a like and comment your thoughts on the latest patch and how crazy do you guys think I am. And if you want to see more videos like these, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell as well. This is just the overall lore that we've got, and I have a full in-depth video ready right after this one regarding the chess pieces of the Sinners, as well as another one set up for Nefer and Sandrone respectively. So be sure to wait for when those come out, since all of these videos are part of the Lore of Nordkreis series. But that's gonna be it for now, so I'll see you guys in the next video, yeah? Thanks again to Lootbar for supporting this video, and as always, stay mad theorists. Bye!